Senator Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so look, my questions are regarding the prosecution of Palestinian children by the Israelis in Israeli military courts. And I heard the questions that Senator Xenophon asked earlier on this afternoon, so it's sort of not going over that ground, but following up on some of the issues that he raised and that I also wanted to raise. So firstly, does the Australian government have a position on the trial and detention of Palestinian children under Israeli military law in their military courts?
From a human rights point of view, we have made regular human rights representations around some of those issues that were raised by Senator Xenophon and have been mentioned by you now.
Right. So what representations have been made?
We actually have those here, and I will ask my colleague, with your permission, Mr. Lloyd Broderick, to read out some of those representations that have been made.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Lloyd Broderick, Assistant Secretary, Middle East Branch. So, Senator, the government has publicly expressed its concerns about allegations of mistreatment of Palestinian minors in detention. I can give you some of the recent representations. The Australian Embassy in Israel reiterated our interests in and concerns over security and judicial practices towards Palestinian minors, most recently on 23 May 2017, so very recently, with Israel's Ministry of Defence. Earlier representations had been made on the 14th of February this year with the Ministry of Justice, and previously on the 29th of September last year, 3rd of May 2016 and 21 January 2016 with the MFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel. On the 15th of January this year, the Australian Embassy in Israel also attended a meeting on this issue chaired by UNICEF. And then we've got other representations that we've made going back to 2015 that I could repeat. During representations on the 14th of February this year, Post raised a number of specific issues around the use of restraints, the mandatory use of audiovisual equipment, and the notification of legal rights.
Okay, well that's good to hear.
So very active, Senator.
Excellent. So I now want to follow up on the issues that I raised in some questions on, myself and Senator Ludlam raised in some questions on notice about the former Foreign Minister Kevin Rudd's directive from 2011 about Australian officials observing the military trials of minors in the military courts. My first response to that, asking whether that directive was still in place, was that there didn't seem to be much knowledge about it, and that in fact there hadn't been any Australian officials that had attended trials of minors in military courts. But then the most recent response, in response to Senator Ludlam's question on notice number 410, that we were told that Australian officials had in fact observed 2 cases at the Offa Military Court on the 1st of February 2012, so now 5 years ago, and that there hadn't been a counter-directive to not attend them. So what I was wanting to know as to whether essentially that directive will be refreshed and whether getting Australian officials to attend, to observe the trials in the military courts will be something that will now be asked of our officials there.
I think we have nothing to add to the question on notice at this point of time, Senator.
Will you take on notice whether there could be consideration given to asking our officials to attend, to observe the military court hearings, given that that directive is, so the directive is still in place, correct?
Well, there has been a change of government since then, but we would certainly take that on notice and we can explore that further.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow it up at later estimates, I expect.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. So, look, Senator Xenophon asked some questions about the letter from Military Court Watch of December 2015, which they hadn't received a response, which asked what specific steps that the Australian government would take as a signatory to the 4th Geneva Convention, because with the allegations that the convention was being violated. So can I just confirm whether Australia has taken any steps on the issues raised in that letter?
Well, as I mentioned to Senator Xenophon, I myself have not seen that letter. I've only recently taken over the role in the division, and we are looking into that matter, and we will respond.
Okay. Thank you. On other issues, I just wanted to know whether the government has raised them. One is what our current situation with representation to Israel over the Gaza blockade. Because certainly the information coming out of Gaza at the moment is that life is becoming very dire with the breakdown in health systems, water, sewerage, and potentially very severe consequences for people's well-being in Gaza.
Well, we do remain concerned about the Gaza situation and have also provided support over the years not into Gaza itself, but with NGOs into the Palestinian territories. On this specific issue, I'm not aware of any recent representations that we have made. Given Australia's representations on other issues, do you think that it is, would it be an appropriate issue for Australia to make representations to the Israeli government over? We could certainly consider this and explore it further with including with the Minister.
Okay, thank you. And the next issue is the issue, being back to the court and the military courts, the use of administrative detention. So has there been representations made to the Israeli government over administrative detention, which is essentially people being detained without charge for indefinite periods?
Our representations, as we've mentioned, have focused on these situations with regard to minors. I don't know if Mr Broderick wants to add anything to that. He's indicating he's got nothing further to add.
So, Mr Broderick?
Sorry, no.
Nothing further to add. Okay. And so, again, if that could be taken as something to consider making representations on?
We will take that into account.
Yes. And the last area is the ongoing program of house demolitions by the Israeli government in the occupied Palestinian territories. That I'm informed by Israeli human rights organisation B'Tselem that over the last decade, up to June last year, that Israel demolished over 1,000 homes of Palestinians in the West Bank and 684 buildings in 2016 alone, just up to August. So, and that both the US and EU officials have spoken out about these demolitions. So has the Australian government made any representations to Israel about the house demolitions?
My understanding is that we have expressed concern consistent with our approach to a two-state solution that we support.
Can you give me some more details of what concerns have been expressed?
I'm unable to do it myself at the moment unless Mr Broderick can add to it.
I don't have specific details, Senator. We'd have to take that one on notice and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before I go to Senator Kitching, Senator Fawcett has some questions in the same space, but Mr McDonald, you wanted to make a comment.
Just for Senator Rice, just one of the questions on our support within the Palestinian territories in relation to the aid program. I think it's important to note the support we give to UNRWA in particular, which we've been doing, so the UN Relief and Work Agency, which we've been doing for a number of years in terms of our global funding of over $20 million, which actually provides support for those refugees in Gaza and the West Bank. So that, as well as the additional country program funding we provide, so we provide support of around $40 million or so overall. I just think it's important to make that point.
Absolutely. In fact, my colleague Senator Ludlam was going to ask some more questions about the aid program, which I could do now if I've got time. No, I didn't think so.
I just thought because you asked, I just thought
aid is tomorrow. Senator Fawcett, then Senator Kitching. Senator Fawcett.